Other things are things like environmental impacts, and those are a little bit tougher sometimes to quantify. The average U.S. office worker is responsible for the death of one old-growth tree every year. And we're not going to get into all the different ways to measure environmental impacts, but certainly some of them are presented in our Epics documents that ways to do it. So you know that if you can go out and you can say, hey, look, you got 200 employees, you started printing double-sided, it saves you 40% of your paper, boom. You got 200 employees, that's going to give me 80 old-growth trees that you're making that change is going to save every year. From CO2 impact, there's CO2 calculators out there, but there's an environmental impact with producing people's CO2, and this one might be the shortest class. There's CO2 emissions where people emit, and that is an environmental impact. Why do you measure that? Why do you measure every single little environmental impact? Two reasons. One, these companies are going green to save money in a lot of ways, but somewhere in their heart of hearts, they also want to do the right thing. And if you make it just about money, then whatever project comes along that makes or saves them more money than yours begins to out-prioritize your projects in their minds. And it might just do that anyway, but hopefully without the cynic's view, they're going to weigh into the fact that, hey, wait a minute, there are environmental benefits to what we're doing to this change. I'm going to prioritize this one ahead of that one, even though that one makes or saves me a little bit more money, or at least on equal footing with that other one that makes or saves me more money. Because it's important. It's important for the world, and it's important in terms of people's decision-making process. It's important in terms of a lot of the way consumers look at these companies as to what they're doing and what their environmental impacts are. And increasingly so, the investment community is starting to look at these things. So, environmental impacts are important, and measuring them is important. How to measure ROI is always case-specific to what type of change you're making and what type of company that you're changing. That ROI model that I gave you is the academic version of that model, of that formula. Remember that you want to measure the results that your clients think are important. They might care more about the environmental impacts than they do the ROI impacts. That can happen. So you want to focus on those. They might care about the strict ROI, or they might have some variation of ROI over a certain time frame that they care about, which is very likely the case, almost certainly in any place that has to do quarterly or annual reporting to an investment community. If you're working with a public company, their time frames are often truncated down to a quarter, whereas if you're working with a regular business owner, 6 months might be more in line with what they're doing, or even a year. A lot of times people are under the gun to put out quarterly numbers and quarterly reporting, so they want something that's going to give an impact right away. They might have an ROI impact that's according to the next month's press release that they want to issue. This is their new strategic initiative, is to go green, and they want to have some results put up right away, and they want to start to show some cost savings right away from it. So they'll look at that ROI model, and you've got to break it down to them over the course of a quarter, a month, a year, all different time frames. It's all dependent on what your client wants and how do they see the value of working with you. And in terms of measuring ROI impacts, it's always a different case scenario based on what you're doing, but you want to just think it through and keep to the formula and then expand from there. Don't lose sight of the fact that there is a mathematical formula out there for this. And that'll keep you honest anyway. And then how to measure environmental impacts.